used to talking to these things. I'm Rochelle Bohm. I am with North Middlesex SEPAC. We are here with two of my colleagues, Colleen and Jessica, and Katie and, I'm sorry, I forgot her name. Christy, thank you, from Groton Dunstable CPAC. We're really excited to present Brendan Mahan for you tonight. He's going to be speaking about ADHD and executive function. Just a little bit of background about Brendan. We've had him here before. We always have a big crowd because he knows what he's talking about. He has taught in school, he's done special education, he's been a guidance counselor, he's been a principal, counselor. He's worn a lot of hats, and now he's the real thing. He's touring, he's speaking. In fact, every time I turn on Facebook, I see ADHD or something else, and it's Brendan Mahan. He's got a book coming out. He has The Wall of Awful. That's what the book's about. But I'm going to let him talk about him because he knows himself best. So let's give a big hand for Brendan Mahan.
Thank you. Hi. So my name is Brendan Mahan. I am a former teacher, guidance counselor, mental health clinician, special education teacher, principal, current ADHD coach, consultant, speaker, author, almost author. Like, I don't know, it comes out in like a year. It's called Overcoming the Wall of Awful. It'll be in your bookstore, like guaranteed, because I'm signed with one of the top 5 publishers in the world. So yay! So yeah, thank you. It was a little weird. But I'm also you in a lot of ways. So in addition, I'll do my bona fides and I'll tell you how I'm you. So I'm on the organizing committee for the International Conference on ADHD. I'm on the board of directors for an event called CalmerCon that all of you want to know about. CalmerCon takes place in Weston, Massachusetts in August, September. We don't have a date yet for this coming year, it just passed. At the Meadowbrook School in Weston. It's a comic book convention, so Comic Con, right? Only Calmer instead of comic, so C-A-L-M-E-R. And it's basically a comic book pop culture convention for folks with autism, sensory needs, ADHD, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. It's great. My role on the board of directors is that I bring in the professional resources. So I'm bringing in like McLean Hospital and tutors and mental health clinicians and folks that will help you navigate how to budget when you've got a kid with special needs, if that's something that you need to deal with, and all those sorts of things, coaches. So I do that part. But we also have comic book artists and comic book dealers and bookstores and like places where they teach your kids how to be a Jedi or a superhero, and there's bands and video game stations and all this kind of stuff. It's phenomenal for a really small one-day con. It's amazing. So just keep your eye open for that, I guess. And then I am also on the board for the Men's ADHD Support Group, which is the largest like Facebook support group in the world for ADHD. I'm sort of the like celebrity guy who knows people is my job on the board. I'm not really a celebrity, but like compared to them, I guess. Although I'm working on just getting everybody up to my level. So yeah, so that's what I do. I've been doing ADHD work for over a decade now. And the way that I'm you is I have ADHD, in case you can't tell from how I talk and my cadence and my very expressive face. So I have it, I've been living with it for 48 years now. I finally figured it out about a decade ago. I'm also a father of kids who have like challenges, right? I have identical twin sons who are 16 years old. They both have their licenses now. Yay! As of last week, because Gavin failed the first time, passed the second. Nate passed the first time, so he's been driving his brother around for a little while now. Gavin has like autism and OCD, and Nate has ADHD and OCD, right? So it's like alphabet soup in my house. And the part that I just want to let you know, in case any of you are sitting there going, this guy is up here and doesn't know how hard it can get. Nathan, this is going on 3 years ago now. I think it's 3 years ago, earlier this month actually, he came home. He was at McLean Hospital for 3 months because of his OCD. His OCD shut our whole family down for like a year. I know that's the wrong letters, like it's not the same thing, but I've faced that incredible challenge, right? So just so you know that I've seen the level of challenge that this can create. That said, I also have like a podcast called ADHD Essentials. It's about to relaunch. It sort of stopped when Nate got really bad. And then I started writing a book, which makes it hard to do a podcast. But the podcast starts back up, if not this week, then the beginning of next week. So keep an ear open for that. And otherwise, let's talk about ADHD and sort of how things work. My guiding principles, this is the parenting side and the teaching side too, if we have any teachers in the audience. My guiding principles are that everybody wants to contribute to the world around them, right? Especially to their community. And everybody wants to succeed and everyone is doing their best. Start with those assumptions and it will change how you interact with your kid. Because I'm gonna like jump on the teachers for a second. Not because I really think that this is true, but all teachers know at least one teacher who's like, that kid's lazy, right? Teachers, you've all heard that. If we have these assumptions, it ruins lazy. I don't like the word lazy because it's an answer without a solution. Does that make sense? Like, oh, how come the kid isn't doing the thing? Oh, well, they're lazy. Cool, I can stop thinking about that now, but I haven't changed anything. I haven't solved the problem, I haven't tried to make it easier, I haven't gotten any wiggle room on this issue, I just have an answer, so I stop trying, and that kid suffers as a result. Does that make sense? But if I go, all right, well, does it make sense? Does lazy fit if they're doing their best? No, because that's kind of the opposite of lazy, right? Does lazy make sense if they want to succeed? No, because implied with lazy is like they don't really care. And does lazy fit if they want to contribute to the world around them? Not really, because if you're lazy, you're not really contributing. So if I stick with these assumptions, one, it's going to hopefully have me look at my kid with a new lens, right? Like, okay, well, my kid doesn't, I don't know, do the laundry or whatever. They're like, well, if they want to contribute to the world around them, doing the laundry would do that. If they want to succeed, getting the laundry done would be a success. And if they're trying their best and they're not doing their laundry, now what, right? And you can replace laundry with anything. Homework, trying to pass a driver's ed test, the SATs, like I don't care, right? Anything. The answer that really just opens up a door to a whole bunch of other questions. But usually what we end up with, and this is what I want you to think about when you think about your kid, and when you think about yourselves too, and me, as I present up here and you're like, he's not good enough, right? What I want you to think about is there a skill set that's missing, or might there be a resource that is missing? Or both. That's usually what's going on. And the skill could be, I don't know how to do the laundry, right? That's entirely possible. The resource could be, we're out of soap, right? And I'm 10 or 12 or 15 or whatever, and I don't know how to get soap. So I just like, I don't know about soap. The skill could also be that I have sensory stuff going on, right? Autism, ADHD. Sensory stuff is pretty significant when it comes to neurodiversity. So maybe your kid can't handle the smell of dirty socks, and so they're avoiding the laundry because it smells bad. That's entirely possible. Do any of your kids have issue doing the dishes? Anybody like can't get their kid to do the dishes no matter what? That's often a sensory thing. If you buy like rubber gloves, you might find that they're suddenly able to do the dishes. They might need some time getting used to the rubber gloves first, but dishes are like squishy and goopy and gross, and even if you have a dishwasher and they're picking that dish up and putting it in a dishwasher, it's still got tomato sauce on it or crusty food or whatever. Often it's sensory stuff that's getting in the way when you can't figure it out, wonder about sensory stuff or emotional regulation and those sorts of things. By the way, when it comes to like everyone's doing the best they can and everyone wants to succeed and all that stuff, Part of that, just so you all know, is if you have to leave because you need water, have to go to the bathroom or whatever, I won't be insulted. Like, go just, I know we're in a school, but you don't need a pass or whatever. All right, so let's continue. The name ADHD is terrible. I don't like it. It causes a lot of problems. It causes a lot of misunderstanding about what's going on with a person who has it. Because attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is looking at ADHD from the outside, right? All of the names for the mental health stuff that we have were created by like pretty normally functioning white men who are mostly all dead now. And they were like, it's this, that kid can't pay attention. He has a deficit of attention. It's like, no, he doesn't. I have ADHD. I do not have anything that remotely resembles a deficit of attention. I have an overabundance of an attention. That happens. I have trouble regulating my attention. That's really what's going on. I can't always put my attention where it needs to be, when it needs to be there. That doesn't mean that I lack attention, right? And all of us are experiencing that now. Anybody feeling the pull of the phone in their pocket all of a sudden just because you saw mine? Yeah, you are. Don't lie. I know. Yeah, thank you for being honest, sir. And if I'm talking to you and I'm like, Rochelle's talking to me and I'm like, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I just keep messing with my phone and staring at it, that doesn't mean that I lack attention. I am just not paying attention to her. My attention is, in fact, somewhere. And with ADHD, sometimes it's obvious because they're staring at their phone. And sometimes it's not, because they have the coolest thoughts in their head that you don't get to know about. Or maybe it's anxiety thoughts, right? So it's difficult for us to regulate our attention and put it where it needs to be. We often need help with that. Have any of you heard someone say, or maybe said to yourself, what do you need, an engraved invitation to do the laundry, wash the dishes, do your homework? Anybody have that phrase come up to them, from them, whatever? As a person with ADHD, yes, I need an engraved invitation. And here's the thing, I didn't say I want an engraved invitation. I don't want a engraved invitation. I don't want to need an engraved invitation, but I do in fact often need an engraved invitation. Engraved invitations are obvious and hard to ignore, right? And they make the thing seem important. And that's what I often need, because that's part of ADHD. I need the task to be more obvious so that I know that I should be doing it and that it's important. I also need that task to feel a little more important than it otherwise does. So I need an engraved invitation, so does your kid. It stinks, but it's true. Moving merrily along. ADHD is not always hyperactive, and we're going to get to that in one slide, but it is a disorder. I like to say that ADHD is life on hard mode, because it's just all the stuff that is hard about being an adult is where my deficits live. So it's hard for me to like do the dishes. My car is a wreck. Like if you were to look at my car, you'd be like, that guy is not allowed to stand on a stage and talk to you about anything. Because there's no way he's a successful human. Like not with a car like that. Do you see how many gum wrappers are in here? It's not okay. I drive safer when there's gum in my mouth because I'm fidgeting to focus, right? It's a deficit. It makes my life harder. I struggle to do the little things. Big things I'm good at. I signed with one of the top 5 publishers in the world. That's a big thing, and it went fairly smoothly. But like, dealing with the mail, oh my God. And it's a paradox. It's something that's weird about ADHD. My thing is, there we go. It's being slow. So there's 3 kinds of ADHD. Pooh is our inattentive ADHD. Inattentive is the kid that's just sort of out to lunch, not really tuned in. There's also hyperactive ADHD, rapid, right? The one that keeps moving and it's going and going and going and going. The energy is all outside. And then there's the combined type, Tigger, the one that walks into walls. Right? Just like I'm not really paying attention and I can't seem to stop moving and I'm going and going and going. I am combined. Something that happens with the hyperactivity of ADHD, for those of us who have it, this happens sooner with girls than with boys because of societal expectations, but it happens to boys too, is eventually we figure out that the physical hyperactivity is unacceptable in most scenarios, right? Like I'm not allowed to fidget and bounce and jump and dance. I jumped off the stage earlier because like I just needed that, right? It's part of how I regulate my anxiety before a workshop is I'm always jumping up and down off the stage. That hyperactivity though, like it's weird when the speaker is just jumping down off the stage and I'm like, I can get away with it, it's an ADHD workshop, they know what they're in for, and if they didn't, now they do. But what happens is as we sit in school and go, oh, okay, I keep getting in trouble for tipping back in my chair, getting up out of my seat, whatever, that hyperactivity turns inward, and that becomes anxiety. Because now my brain is going a mile a minute, and I'm worrying about all these things, and anxious thoughts are happening, and I'm thinking faster and faster. So just know that that's there, that that's a component of this. Did it just turn and then go back? Okay. All right, so by the numbers, right? This is a little dated. I haven't found the updated one, so these are a little bit old, they might be wrong. When it comes to ADHD, we've got 14 to 17-year-olds, it's about 11 to 13% in Massachusetts. I don't have numbers post-COVID. I'm assuming post-COVID these numbers are gonna go up, and I just haven't found them yet. But a lot of kids got diagnosed during COVID for probably obvious reasons, right? Like mom and dad see the struggle the kid is having, so they pursue diagnosis more intently. Teachers see which kids they're struggling with more readily. And we started talking about mental health during COVID in a way that we had never talked about it before. And that made it acceptable to get a diagnosis. It's that holds true for everything, right? How come everyone's anxious now? If they were anxious before, we just didn't talk about it, right? How come everyone has autism now? They had autism before, we just didn't talk about it. Now we're talking about these things, as evidenced by the fact that there's this many people here, right? The first time we did this pre-COVID, there were like 20 people, I think.
Oh no, we had standing room only.
Was it? Was it that? Okay. All right, never mind. There's still more here than there were then.
Yes.
So of those, right, 75% are receiving medication. If any of you are like feeling bad about giving your kid meds and thinking you're doing it wrong, or thinking if you did it, you're doing it wrong, 75% are taking meds. You're not doing it wrong. It's valid, right? If your brain can't make the neurotransmitters it needs, store-bought is fine. Also, I don't care if you take meds or not. Do whatever you want. I'm not here telling you you have to. I don't want you to avoid meds because you feel like they're bad or taboo or something. Like someone's gonna judge you as being a bad parent. That's not true. I probably don't have Concerta in me anymore because I took it at 6 o'clock this morning, but I had Concerta in me earlier today. Am I doing way too much like just being real? Because I can try to be more but I didn't want to tie on purpose. It's just not who I am as a person. About 47% are receiving behavioral treatment. I have been trying to figure out if that is, this is from the CDC, by the way, so these numbers are a mess now. Sorry. But what I haven't been able to figure out, is where's my little thing is, about this number forever, like pre-COVID even. I don't know if school counts for that or not. I would think it would be higher if school counted, right? Because 504s, IEPs, there's often behavioral stuff in there somewhere. And then those receiving both is about 35%. So this is sort of the treatment of ADHD and how it works. When it comes to ADHD and other stuff, about 67% of kids with ADHD have at least one co-occurring condition, right? Nate has OCD. 33% of those kids with ADHD have one, 16% have two co-occurring conditions, and about 18 have three co-occurring conditions. My co-occurring condition is probably anxiety, like just generalized, but not really. Like I don't think I actually would fit that diagnosis. I'm probably in this smaller percentage of about a third that don't have anything else besides ADHD. But I've got friends that have ADHD and bipolar disorder and autism, right? And friends who have ADHD and autism. That's, if you ever see AUDHD, that's autism and ADHD. So don't get thrown off by the U. That's fairly common. I like to think of ADHD and autism as cousins, right? Like there's a lot of overlap between those two. And a lot of it is executive function, which we're going to talk about. If I can ever move my slide. Back up. No, it's the wrong one. Thank you. All right, so stuff that might come along with ADHD. Autism spectrum disorder, like I mentioned. Oppositional defiance. Anybody care about oppositional defiance? Anyone like, please talk about that, because oh my God. All right, let me talk about that for a second. All right, not my super jam, but like, I'm pretty good at it. So, oppositional defiance disorder is an anxiety disorder. That's the place to start. It's not like my kid is a jerk disorder. Like that's not the way to look at it. The way to look at it is anxiety. Have you ever walked a dog, right? Like you're walking the dog and you're like, doo-doo-doo-doo, and then you bang a left and the dog hauls right or plants itself. Anybody ever had that experience with a dog? Like, because the dog is just like, no, there's a pen right here, and I don't want to step on it and fall to my death. So it's on the ground down there now, instead of on the ground up here. So what's happening is you bang that left, and you surprise the dog, and the dog was like, no! I don't know what's over there, so I'm going to stay right here till I figure out what's up. To me, that's oppositional defiance. I'm not calling your kid a dog. I am, but not on purpose. Except that I say this all the time, so it's sort of on purpose. That's the lens to look at your kid, right? If we surprise our kids with asking something and they're like, no, it's mostly happening out of anxiety. And the harder we fight, the more no they get, right? Because we're upping their anxiety. Does that mean you should walk around on eggshells around your kid? No, of course not. You're the parent, you gotta lead. But the way you lead will affect how they receive it. If you are bossing them around, it's not gonna work. But if you can lead them instead, right? And like, you wanna bang that left, so you kind of go up to the corner and you stop and you look at the dog and the dog looks at you and then you're like this and you go this way and the dog's like, yeah, cool, I wanted to go left too, this is great. Because you communicated clearly, right? And slower and calmer. Same thing with your oppositional kid. The more we can regulate our emotions, the better they will be able to regulate their emotions, with the caveat that they're a kid and they stink at that because their brains aren't ready, like their brains haven't fully developed. So they're not good at regulating their emotions yet. Does that help? Am I making sense to folks? Okay. My wife does this to me. Like she doesn't have oppositionality, but like, well, she does. But she wouldn't say that. But whenever I surprise her with a request, the answer is always no. Like, which means I end up doing stuff, because I'll call her and be like, can you pick the boys up at soccer? And she's like, why? No. And I'm like, okay. Guess I'll drive them home and not go to Kempo. So that's oppositionality disorder. Other stuff. Dyslexia and dyscalculia. Dyscalculia is just dyslexia with numbers, right? Dyslexia is a reading disorder where the words are hard to process. Nate's got a little bit of a touch of that. Anxiety, in general, so we're talking all the things that fall under anxiety. ODD gets its own little stuff because it's important and a big deal. But we're looking at obsessive compulsive disorder, we're looking at eating disorders, we're looking at generalized anxiety disorders, all that kind of stuff. Depression, which goes along with anxiety pretty easily. Tic disorders, so Tourette's and that kind of stuff. And then dyspraxia, which is like coordination. So folks with ADHD often struggle with coordination. Just like anything from like mildly clumsy to like very clumsy to I'm not good at sports. If that makes sense. Like that's the sort of dyspraxia stuff. Come on, thank you. Did I go too many slides over? Oh, no, we're okay. All right, so dopamine. How many of you have heard of dopamine? How many of you heard that it's like the happy chemical? Anybody hear that? Good, I'm gonna ruin that for you right now. And it's gonna make things so much more clear. You're gonna be like, wow, everything makes more sense now. Dopamine is not the happy chemical. It's the brain's anticipation and reward chemical. And if you only think it makes you happy, you're gonna ignore stuff that is full of dopamine and not understand behaviors that your kid is taking, your spouse is taking, that are actually dopamine hunts. So, the brain's anticipation and reward chemical, that's dopamine. In the ADHD brain, two things are happening. My brain does not make as much dopamine as my wife's brain. She's neurotypical. She gets migraines. Other than that, neurotypical. So my brain just doesn't make as much dopamine as hers does. And my brain is incredibly inefficient with how it uses its dopamine. Dopamine gets recycled in the brain. It's called dopaminergic reuptake. My wife's brain is good at that, and my brain is not. So it's sort of like my wife is driving a Prius with a full tank of gas, and I'm driving a Hummer with a half a tank of gas, and we're supposed to go to the same place. It's not going to work. I just don't have as much fuel, and I'm not using it as effectively. So I have to do stuff to get more dopamine during the course of my day. I take ADHD meds. My ADHD meds are aimed at increasing the availability of dopamine in my brain. Most of the stimulants do that. Concerta is a stimulant. I also try to exercise in the morning. I don't always pull that off because I have ADHD, but most of the time I do, and I have a physical trainer that I work with on Tuesdays and Thursdays to make sure at least twice a week I'm doing that. And I go to Kempo every Saturday mornings to make sure that 3 times a week I'm doing that. So like I get, at least some of my mornings, I get that exercise and movement in. And I have to stop during the day, right? Like I stop and take breaks and I do things to increase my dopamine. Sometimes it's good strategies and sometimes it's bad strategies. Because you know what's full of dopamine? Sugar. It's not great. It's a battle, but those cookies are full of dopamine and helps me keep going, right? Or talking to people, right? I will leave my house in the middle of the day just to get out of the house because I'm searching for dopamine. I call it going on a dopamine hunt. So, you're driving me crazy, computer. Oh, good, you did it. So, the ADHD brain, really all of our brains, are constantly seeking dopamine. Dopamine is the root of all addiction, right? So, like, yeah, alcohol is a chemical addiction. Nicotine is a chemical addiction. Various drugs are chemical addictions. But gambling, video games, that's not a chemical addiction. It's dopaminergic. That's what's making us want to do the thing. That's the anticipation and reward part. Does that make sense? Like there's dopamine hiding inside the gambling. There's dopamine hiding inside the video games. I mentioned earlier that dopamine is not the brain's happy chemical. It's just anticipation and reward. Because you know what else people do to get some more dopamine so they can do the thing? They argue. Arguing is full of dopamine. There are people smiling here like, yep, I do that. I totally do it. So if you're ever wondering, like, how come my kid is fighting with me? It might be a dopamine hunt. Does that mean that they're like, I need some dopamine, so I'm going to argue with mom before I do the dishes? No! That's not, like, none of this is happening at a conscious level, except for maybe 1 or 2 people who are really grinning big at me. For the most part, it's just sort of a thing that happens, right? Even, my kid did this last week, I think. Have you guys moved back to paper? Like in schools from iPads? Like, are they suddenly bringing worksheets home again? Because my kids are bringing worksheets home again. And it's like trying to get off of screens kind of stuff. And I used to use this example and I had to put it down because it didn't matter anymore, but now it's valid again, so I'm going back to it. Last week, one of my kids was like doing their homework and then all of a sudden he needed a stapler. He didn't need a stapler. That wasn't what was happening. He needed dopamine. And he needed a win, right? Like homework was boring and tedious and awful and he hated it. He didn't want to do it anymore and he needed a break. And he needed to feel like he had accomplished something because homework was not feeling that way. And he went off and got a stapler and he stapled his pieces of paper together and then it was like, yay! And then he went right back into doing his homework. Dopamine hunt. There are people who are like, all of you are like, I can think of a dopamine hunt I've gone on. That's what that is, right? It's a dopamine hunt. I just need a small win. If you start to figure that out about yourself, you can go, I just need to feel successful somewhere, so let me find a thing that I can be successful with. When I was young, when I was in my 20s, so, because I'm old now, so 20s was young. After college, I was looking for jobs, and it's awful, so I hear you. I taught myself to contact juggle. Like when I just needed it to feel successful, I would take out, what contact juggling is when you put a ball on the top of your hand, you like roll it up over the tips of your fingers, then onto the other side of your hand, and it stays in contact with your hand the whole time. I got pretty good at it. I'm not as good now, but I was for a little while there. And it was my thing to feel successful while I was banging my head against this incredibly unsuccessful thing of trying to find a job. So that's dopamine, right? I didn't know it was dopamine at the time, but now I do. That thing, it was fun, and I felt like I was achieving something. The ADHD brain is going to zero in on dopamine wherever possible. Some of you are like, what are they talking about? Is it important? Why are they telling secrets? Because dopamine, right? You're like, Brendan, you're not engaging enough. We need secrets. And your kids are doing that in class. So when the teacher's boring, and all teachers are boring, no matter how amazing you are, because you can't be entertaining all the time, and because what lands for one kid isn't going to land for another kid. It's just the nature of the profession. When they start to get bored, then they might start looking for dopamine. And that might mean they go sharpen a pencil, it might mean they go get a drink of water, it might mean they talk to the kid next to them. Those behaviors that we don't like, I don't like the word misbehavior, so I'm not using it, but the less than useful behaviors, that's how your kid is looking for dopamine. And it's a useful lens, right? Like, okay, does my kid try to find dopamine by building something or talking to somebody? What's that about, right? And you can start to look at ways to help them feel more rewarded and more engaged by finding the ways that they disengage. Does that make sense? Right? Like when I disengage, whatever I go to, that's a way, that's engaging to me. It's why I went that way. So those strategies can be brought into the classroom or into the home as a way to engage your kid, as a way to hook them up with something and give them handholds to get back into the task they need to be doing. All behavior is communication, right? It serves a purpose. There's no such thing as misbehavior. The behavior serves a purpose. And it's communicating stuff to us if we can just listen and try to crack the code. It's not always easy, but it's worth doing. Man, let's see it. Skip it. I'm using buttons. It's faster. ADHD and focus. I already talked about how I'm bad at regulating my attention. My attention is a lot like a candle. My wife's is more like a flashlight. My wife, it blows my mind that my wife can sit on the couch with my sons and I, and we can be watching some action movie where stuff's blowing up. And she wants to be with us, but couldn't care less about the movie, so she'll read. And I'm like, how? What? How are you doing that? Because I can't do that to save my life. I taught English, guys, like I was an English major. I'm not bad at reading, but I'm bad at reading when there's noise. Even if it's like one noise, like I'm reading and reading and reading, and then someone drops a fork and then it's over, and I'm like, right? Because my attention is more like a flashlight, it's more like a candle. It's just lighting up everything all around me. And that's behavior in class for your kids, that's behavior at home. When they're like, but what was that? What's over there? What's happening, right? It's something happened, I heard a noise, whatever, and that noise, you know what that noise is full of? Come on. Dopamine. Yeah, it's full of dopamine. Your kid's like, what's over there? It must be dopamine. And you know what else is full of dopamine? Oh my God. Right? So you gotta build in defenses to avoid that. Like social media is nothing but dopamine. And it's one of the few things that focuses the ADHD attention, because there's someone talking to me as I slide through my reels or whatever, and I get to hit a button that has a little thumb up or heart or whatever, and if I posted a reel and someone liked that, oh my God, that's amazing, right? Because the ADHD brain focus is usually like a candle, but sometimes we hyperfocus, and then it becomes a laser, and the world disappears, and we're just into the thing that we're into. I can remember I was at my grandmother's house. My dad and I had this tradition where we would go and buy comic books, and then we would go to my grandmother's house, because my grandmother's house was boring, and my dad knew that. He was like, you can read comic books while I play Scrabble with your grandmother. But I was sitting in the living room with my dad and my grandmother, and I was reading a comic, and they were talking, do-do-do-do-do, and apparently, unbeknownst to me, because X-Men, my grandmother was like, hey Brendan, hey Brendan, hey Brendan, I don't know how many times, but all of a sudden my dad went, Bren! Way louder than that. Scared, oh my God, terrible. I still remember it, and I was like 12. And like, wow, right? Because I was hyper-focusing. Now I know what that was. And if you've got a kid that you kind of pull out of hyper-focus a lot like that, they might start to fight against the hyper-focus. Not always great, because hyper-focus can be a pretty powerful tool for productivity. When we hyper-focus, we get way more done than seems humanly possible. But we legitimately get it done. That's the only reason people with ADHD can legit write the paper the night before it's due. It's because we end up hyper-focusing, which exhausts us. It ruins us for the next day or two because we're spending reserves that we don't have. There's also a thing called flow. Have you guys heard of flow? Like any sports people who are like, that's flow. Flow is like hyper-focus, but you enter it in a healthy way, and you're more productive and more focused, and you come out of it more gently. That's when the Patriots used to do it. You know, when they would all of a sudden take over the game in the fourth quarter and come back from 38 points down or whatever. That's because the whole team was in flow. So flow is like hyper-focus's good twin. You're killing me. There we go. Jump slides. So just some stuff to think about when it comes to ADHD. There's a lot of pieces of ADHD that are actually strengths that we think of as weaknesses. And if we just flip the lens, it's helpful, right? Is my kid distractible or are they curious? Probably both, right? Because the reason they get distracted is because they're curious about what's over there. Curiosity is a powerful thing that we want to support in our kids. We just want to teach them how to use it in a way that is serving them as opposed to damaging them. All of these are like that. Impulsivity and enthusiasm are not that far apart. As a guy who is pretty enthusiastic about a lot of stuff, I've learned to keep my impulsivity in check for the most part. But I kept the enthusiasm, right? So that's a strategy with your kid. If your kid is really impulsive, start to think of that as enthusiasm and train them to look at it that way and use it in that way, instead of just flying off and doing whatever. But even the impulsivity is helpful, right? My whole book deal is because I did something impulsively. I saw a ghostwriter on the internet who was like, I do ghostwriting, and I was like, what's that? I have a book I know I want to write, can I talk to you? And I met with her. She's not my ghostwriter, she's my co-writer, because people should get credit for the work that they do, so her name is on the cover. But it was totally an impulsive thing for me to do on Twitter, like 3 months before Twitter went downhill. I met her, but like totally worked, right? And a lot of my life is sort of, I could probably do that, let me try that thing, and then I have a podcast, and then I write a book, and like those sorts of things. The inattentiveness of ADHD is often imaginative, right? They're not attending to you, but they're attending to whatever's amazing that's in their head. And if we can get what's in their head out onto a page or into a picture, now that imagination is serving them more effectively. And sometimes that imagination is serving them as a de-escalation thing, right? If you've got a kid that's pretty anxious, sometimes they're disconnecting into their imaginary world because the real world kind of stinks, and that's soothing to them. And we want to know if that's what they're doing, so we can come up with appropriate times to do that, and also other things to soothe their anxiety, and dig into the root of their anxiety so we can reduce it and move into a healthier place. The whole driven by a motor, have you guys heard that phrase from Ned Hallowell? Yeah. Guys, I am like old now. I used to be 5'6", and now I'm 5'4", and it's not okay. Oh my God, what happened to my spine? I don't think rulers changed. But, like, people follow big, tall men, not like 5'4" dudes. But I end up in leadership positions all the time. I rounded off 3 of them when we started, right? Just because of my drive, right? It's my energy level that does it. And that's the driven by motor stuff. I've just harnessed it in a way that is useful, because the people who don't stop often end up leading other people. So that driven by a motor thing, if we can steer that towards leadership in good directions, it's gonna work gangbusters. And teachers, parents too, this might be comforting for some parents, but teachers in the audience, that kid who like distracts your class, anybody have that kid? You're that kid? Good. So he's the kid who distracts the class. Here's the deal. This is what I want you to know, and everyone else listen in and take from this lesson what you will. Do you know that you're a leader? Good. The only way that you can distract the class is by leading them in a direction that's not useful, at least relative to the teacher, right? So think about what the direction the teacher's leading them in and try to like join in, right? Try to help the teacher out. But that's what's up, right? And oftentimes when I talk to those kids who distract the class and I'm like, do you know that you're a leader? They go, no. You're the first kid who ever said yes to that question. Because you trained our staff already, Brendan, so we know this kid. But yeah, right? Like, it's because they're leading that they can distract. And they often don't think of themselves as leaders, and teachers often don't think of those kids as leaders. But they're leaders. And if we can take that perspective, it changes the strategies. The disorganization is creativity. Creativity is just finding 2 things that don't look like they should go together and putting them together. That's most of how creativity works now. And if you ever looked at the desk of someone who has ADHD, like, oh my God, right? And that is what it's like in here too, right? Like in the same way that stuff is kind of all over the place on my desk at home, it's also kind of all over the place in my head. And that means I make connections in ways that most people don't. And that's really useful and really powerful and leads to some great creativity. Oppositionality is independence. It's also anxiety, but it's building up that independence. This isn't useful at his age, like not that great at his age, but once you get to be in your 20s and 30s, people with ADHD fail more often than folks who don't have ADHD. We just do, because we have executive functioning issues. But what that means is as we get older, we get really good at problem solving. Because we're like, oh, I've already done that before. I've made this mistake before, I know how to do that, right? Half of why I'm as good of a consultant and coach as I am is because people are like, I made this mistake, and I'm like, I made that mistake when I was 23, this is how you solve it, right? Or I've made that mistake a bunch of times, and this is how you solve it. So as long as we're learning from our mistakes, and we're not always learning immediately, sometimes we have to make the same mistake a few times before we figure it out, but as we're learning from those mistakes, we end up becoming pretty good problem solvers as a result. And then the lying and manipulation, because like, people with ADHD lie, it's a thing. It develops good social skills. I got out of middle school because I lied my way through middle school. That's why I got to high school. I'm not gonna pretend that I didn't. It didn't feel good, and I was like, I'm not doing that anymore, and I gave up on it. Even today, I was like, I forgot my projector. I could have tried to make something up like it was broken or whatever, but it's not, I forgot it. So I learned that didn't like that, but I also developed some social skills, because when you're trying to talk to your 7th grade science teacher about why you don't have your lab report that he gave you an extra week to do, and you really need to not fail it, and by coincidence, the day that the lab report was due, there was a sub, and you're like, I gave it to the sub, and he's like, nah, I don't know. Okay, but you can give it to me tomorrow, right? Like that stuff, you learn some stuff about how to work with people. And the lying, a lot of us misinterpret lying. Lying gets a bad rep, sort of. A lot of us think lying is, a lot of folks will say lying is bad, like basically because it's bad, right? Or because it's disrespectful. Anybody feel like lying is disrespectful? Anybody have that perspective? Because I don't. I would lie to, I would get bad grades. I changed the grades on my progress reports because they were written in like pen when I was 12 or whatever, and I could turn an F into a B and hope I got away with it. Sometimes I did. That wasn't coming from a place of disrespect though. That was coming from a place of like esteem, of like, I am afraid that I'm gonna ruin my relationship with my mom and dad. Does that make sense? And part of the problem was I was a kid with ADHD who didn't know he had ADHD because they were only figuring ADHD out back then. So I was being asked to do stuff that I just couldn't do. And no one was teaching me how to do it. They were just like, study. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they were like, you know, study. So I read, what does that mean? Like, I read my notes. Yeah, you took notes. How do I take notes? I didn't take notes. What are you talking about? Right? Like that kind of stuff. I didn't have those skills, and my grades suffered as a result until I developed them. I was lying to try to maintain those relationships. That was the core of any lie that I ever told. It was like, I don't want this person to think poorly of me, so I'm gonna like change reality for a day so I can fix the problem and clean up the mess, and hopefully they don't notice when I come out the other end tomorrow. And it took me a long time to be like, nope, this is the thing I did wrong. I'm just gonna own all my stuff, because it's easier than trying to juggle 48 lies or whatever, and the guilt and the shame of that. I'd rather not have those feelings. So I'm just gonna be straight up with my errors and mistakes. But that's where that's coming from. It's coming from like a survival strategy. And it often comes from anxiety. Like, fight, flight, freeze, fib. Fib is one of them. So is flock. So the creativity of ADHD is because folks with ADHD are really good at divergent thinking. Divergent thinking is brainstorming. It's like just throwing everything out there and seeing where the stuff goes. Convergent thinking is when we whittle it down and zoom in and like start making decisions. We're often really bad at convergent. We struggle with convergent. Doesn't mean we can't do it, it just means it's hard, right? We're much better at divergent. So we do really well when we can be the divergent person, and then we have someone else on our team that's like, dope, let's figure out how to make this thing happen now, right? Like, we're the big idea guy, but we need someone who can make it happen. Or we need to be taught how to become the person who can make it happen. I want to stand over here. Come on, there we go. A couple other superpowers, hyperfocus I already talked about. Folks with ADHD are often very empathetic. And that's that attention stuff where we just notice a whole lot of stuff, and we're catching all these nonverbals, and we're noticing how someone's feet are planted and what their face is doing and all the tone of voice and all these kinds of things. It leads to us being pretty empathic. We're reading a lot of stuff. Also, we're pretty empathic because, like, we get in trouble a lot and we make a lot of mistakes and we are not feeling certain about how people feel about us one way or the other, and we're really sensitive to rejection. And that kind of stuff also means that we're empathic because we're trying to avoid that rejection. We're really, really sensitive to rejection. And it hurts. And we often don't know why we're being rejected, which is not fun. And that empathy can lead to overwhelm, right? When I get rejected, my empathy means it hurts more than it does to someone who doesn't have ADHD. When people have strong emotions around me, I just pick them up like they're mine, and they're not, right? So if someone's really upset, I'm like, oh, I have to fix that. I don't. I've comforted people that I didn't even know. Like, I've been like at the mall and seen someone upset and like, are you okay? You're not my job, but you are now because I made you my job, right? Or if someone's really angry, that can be really intimidating to me. That can be really overwhelming for me. I actually take martial arts to learn how to manage that. But that's that empathy component. And then the creativity is there too, right? That's the divergent thinking. And when you're really creative, sometimes it can be hard to fit in. Either because you're in your head all the time or because you're just working differently, behaving in a way that the mainstream doesn't, and how do I match the mainstream? ADHD specifically for kids. I want you to look at your kids with a long view. I want you to knock 2 years off their age just for the sake of doing it. No, I'll talk about that in a second. Curiosity, empathy, problem solving, right? Let's focus on their strengths. So the ADHD brain lags 2 years behind its peers. It's a developmental disorder. It's a developmental delay of the executive functioning system, so the prefrontal cortex. It does not develop as quickly with ADHD as it does for neurotypical people. It's 33% is like the rate, which is hard to quantify. We used to say 1 to 3 years. In practice, that still works. That's why we used to say it. I take the middle just to make life easier. That 2 years really matters, right? A kid who is in 5th grade is suddenly in 3rd grade. Your 7th grader magically became a 5th grader. Your junior in high school is a freshman. Wow. Your sophomore's an 8th grader. That 2-year difference is pronounced. But it's not 2 years for everything. And that's really frustrating. Because they might be great with language and reading. They might even be really good socially. But their ability to plan and prioritize, your junior in high school, who's operating like a freshman when it comes to planning and prioritizing, that's hard. It's difficult to get the essays done. Let's not even talk about college applications coming up, right? Like, that stuff is tricky. So they're often going to need support somewhere. And it doesn't have to be planning and prioritizing. They might be right on age level for that and doing fine. But maybe their time awareness stinks, right? So it matters that there's this developmental delay. And if you can meet your kid where they are, it's going to go more smoothly. And that's why I want you to just go, all right, well, if they were 2 years younger, what would I expect? When they were a freshman, or when they were in 5th grade, or whatever, what was I expecting them to do? How are they performing relative to that? Maybe they're doing better. Maybe that's about right. And if it's about right, cool. Meet them where they are, and then start building the skills to get them to where they need to be, and help fill in that 2-year gap over the course of a year, let's say. So next year, they're only a year behind. Does that make sense? This is what 504s and IEPs are trying to do, by the way. This is a lot of what they're addressing. Taking the long view also matters. I watched a lot of you go, oh, as soon as I started talking about that 2-year gap. A lot of you started to feel the press of that and the weight of that. Here's the deal. Part of that is brain development. So their brains can just keep cooking, and it's gonna be okay. My brain is not as cooked as my wife's brain. That's just the nature of the beast. You don't outgrow ADHD, but it does get easier, okay? When we take a long view, it helps, because it's not about 5th grade, and it's not about junior year or senior year, as much pressure as there is with college. It's about raising a healthy, well-adjusted 26-year-old. You have time. You have lots of time. You even have more time than that. I remember when my career started changing 10 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, like I was a teacher, and now I'm not a teacher anymore, and what do I do? And I was like, who am I? What is my identity? How am I ever gonna have a job? Like it was bad. And then I did the math, and I was like, I'm not even halfway to retirement yet. Like, why am I worrying about this? I can totally rebuild myself and be fine. Turns out I did. Your kids are in elementary school, middle school, high school. Like, there's so much time. They're gonna be okay. They're like, and let me say this, I'm gonna say this again, I'm sure, but your kids are in elementary school, middle school, 5th, high school, right? And you are here in this room learning about them and about you and about how to better help them. They're gonna be okay. Because you're here. That speaks volumes for how good of a parent you are, how great of a parent you are, how much you love your kid, how good you are at finding resources and figuring things out. You plant potatoes, you get potatoes. Like that, they're probably pretty good at finding resources and figuring stuff out too. Also, probably some of you have ADHD. Like, do the math. You plant potatoes, you get potatoes. It goes up and down. But like, they're gonna be okay. And some of that is because you're gonna look at them with curiosity and empathy and problem solving. And you're gonna be like, hey, how do I help? What do you need? And sometimes it's gonna suck and you're gonna fight with them and argue with them and yell at them. I've done that. And then I stopped, because I went, I am asking my kid to do stuff that he just can't do. For him it was OCD and ADHD too. There was a day, this was great, and kind of a nightmare. So Nate had the OCD that leads to hand washing, right? He would wash his hands for 40 minutes and stuff. So he was washing his hands in the sink. And he couldn't touch the sink nozzle, like the thing that turns the water on and off, whatever that's called. He couldn't touch that, because if he touched that, he would recontaminate his hands. Does that make sense? And we're back to washing hands again. He couldn't touch that. So he washed his hands, and that was the OCD part. I took a picture of it and called it alphabet soup. So he washes his hands, he used a lot of soap, and then he left. And then the ADHD kicked in, and he forgot that the water was still running. Yeah, it was like just a mountain of bubbles with water this close to overflowing when I found it. And I was like, oh man, alphabet soup, like the ADHD and the OCD combined, right? But that's okay, because I got it, and I was like empathetic with him, and it was just a problem to solve, and how do we figure this out, right? And then strengths, right? Pay attention to your kids' strengths. I don't know what your kids' strengths are, but I know they have them. They have passions, they have interests, they have stuff they're good at. They have stuff that they're starting to become good at, which is great, because you're like, oh, that's gonna be something. And then sometimes it doesn't, and that's okay. But they do that, right? And sometimes they fall into stuff that they don't want to do, and they build new strengths. My kid accidentally became the president of the film club in high school. Because the teacher was like, anybody want to be president? And he raised his hand thinking someone else would too, and nobody did. And that's Gavin, and he is an introvert and does not want to be the president. He's just like, this is a nightmare. But he's an introvert. I said to him, I was like, look, either way, this is great for you. You can learn how to advocate for yourself and tell her you don't want to be president. And I will be just as proud of you for that as I will if you are president of the Film and TV Studies Club. Either one of those is cool by me. And he forgot to tell her. And now he's president. Which means he's gonna have to advocate for himself a lot more because he doesn't know what he's doing and he needs help. Right? But like, that's great, right? His weakness is sort of coming around the backside and giving them a strength somewhere, which is exciting to me. So, some non-obvious stuff about ADHD is the role of perfectionism. ADHD can lead to perfectionism. Perfectionism is way more about anxiety, but I'm sure at least half of you are like, yeah, my kid, right? Or me. So when it comes to perfectionism, right? Kids with ADHD are estimated to hear about 20,000 more negative messages than their peers. I don't buy that number, because how do you know, right? Like that's, no one ran this study. Someone just picked that number out of a hat and made it up. But I can tell you, as a kid who has ADHD, or had ADHD when I was a kid, I heard more negative stuff from my teachers and my parents than my peers did. I know that I did. I have a whole model about it called the Wall of Awful. And that leads to perfectionism for some kids. It's like, and even, it led to perfectionism for me too, but it wouldn't look like it in me. Right? Like some kids are staying up all night doing their homework and trying to make sure everything is perfect, and they can't handle done is better than perfect. So it's gotta be perfect, it gotta be perfect, it gotta be perfect, right? They're rewriting essays 2 and 3 times. I was the kid who went, well, I can't do it perfect, so I'm just not gonna do it. Because I can't win, right? Like I learned helplessness was where I ended up going. That's still perfectionism. It just is a less effective version of perfectionism. But equally damaging, just in different ways. Also, folks with ADHD are abnormally sensitive to punishment and reward. So, if we get punished, we're going to have a really strong response to that. It's going to really impact us. And it's not great, right? Like, the road I went was, I can't do this. I can't win, so I'm just not going to try, right? So if I could go in and get a grade on my test without having studied, I would do that, but I'm not going to study. Because if I studied, that meant I tried. And if I studied and then I took the test and failed it, I really failed it. But if I didn't try and then I failed it, I could always kind of sit back on, I didn't try. Does that make sense? That like mental gymnastics that teenage me was doing. It's not a great thing, but it's what I was doing. But hope is also really great for us, right? The positive stuff. We need that too, and we are really motivated by positive reinforcement. My wife is not a cheerleader at all. Like, that's not her deal. I wish she was, because I would do all the things. Because if she was just like, hey, thanks for doing the dishes, I'd be like, woohoo! I can't do enough dishes. I'm gonna dirty some dishes just so I can wash them. Like, that's how I tend to respond to positive feedback. And I often need credit too, right? Like, I do the dishes. I would wait till my wife was coming in that door, and then I would do the dishes. So that she saw me doing them. And because like I said, she's not a cheerleader, right? She's just gonna like walk past me. But I would know that she knew. and that made me feel like I got credit. Does that make sense? Even though it sounds insane? Because like if the sink was full of dishes when she left and it was empty when she got home, it's not like someone broke into our house and did the dishes, it was probably me. But I needed that concrete, like I know she knows. And that's ADHD, right? Your kids need to know that you know. It's back to that engraved invitation thing. You're not being too obvious about stuff, right? And that includes forgiving them when they make a mistake. That's so important. I'm gonna do a parenting trap, so bear with me. You've all done this, I'm sure. Here's what happens. The kid messes up, right? They make some kind of mistake, and you're like, hey, you made this mistake. It's bad, da-da-da. Here's how you need to fix it. Like, you gotta fix the mistake, da-da-da-da, right? And they're upset because they made the mistake. So they are guaranteed more anxious and upset than you are because it's their mistake, not your mistake. And they're like, oh, and you're upset with them. And so they're going, oh man, mom's mad at me, dad's mad at me. That relationship is damaged. Is that, you with me? And then they have to go solve this problem that they have caused. But they feel like their relationship is damaged, You know what I mean? So they're not going to ask you for help because the relationship is damaged, and at some level they feel like the way they fix that relationship is by solving the problem. You know? Does that make sense? This pattern? But if they had the skills to fix the mistake, they probably would have avoided it in the first place. So they almost definitely need help solving this problem. But they're not going to ask for it because they don't feel like they can. And so they're stuck. Does that make sense? That's why when your kid makes a mistake, you got to be like, even if you're like, oh my God, and you blow up a little bit, like that happens. But you got to be like, hey, we're good. Like, yes, I want you to get a better grade in math. Yes, you have to pay to fix the window or whatever sort of leave it to beaver event happened in your world. Like, yes, but we're good. Like, we are fine, and I will help you solve this problem. And now they're in a better position. So, and it has to be really obvious. Like, you have to say it. You can't be like, yeah. That like nonverbal vague stuff that we do. Because oftentimes we forgive the kid, and we don't even think we have to tell them, because obviously we forgave you, like you're our kid, duh, right? Like we don't even think we have to say anything about it, but you have to say something about it, especially for ADHD and autism kids, because they need it to be concrete. I am seeing some vigorous head nods right now by some people who are not super old, so just know that that is what's up. More perfectionism stuff. One thing about ADHD, I talked about that 2-year delay. Will anyone out themselves as neurotypical? Is anyone feeling confident in their neurotypicality? All right, so my neurotypical folks, your average is my perfect. And that's a piece of ADHD that's really hard, is for me to perform at the level that neurotypical people perform, like averagely, typically, that's, if not my perfect, it's really close to my perfect. And that is exhausting and overwhelming, and it means that when I'm a kid, I'm looking around at my classmates and going, everybody is perfect all the time. And now I'm off to the races with perfectionism, because I'm misinterpreting what's going on. Does that make sense? And then perfectionism is going to breed shame and anxiety, right? So we're going to have all kinds of trauma, and we want to make sure that if our kid is being perfectionistic, it's striving and not concern, right? So they're trying to attain something, they're leaving no stone unturned, they're motivating, they're not trying to avoid mistakes, they're not afraid of failing, right? They're not playing not to lose, they're playing to win, is what we want to see. All right, the wall waffle. I probably can't connect a video, right? I'll just talk about it. Because I don't think do we have audio?
Yeah, we do.
That I can get to somehow, magically?
Yeah.
Fancy pants. Dope. We'll do a video then, because does that feel better? Like I've been babbling forever. All right, so. Nah, you know what, it's gonna take too long. I'll just talk. So the wall of awful. The wall of awful, wow, that picture should be bigger. I don't know what happened there. The wall of awful is my model for the emotional impact of repeated failure. This is what my book is about. But I'm not selling the book. I've been talking about this for like 5-6 years, almost a decade. The wall of awful is built by repeated failure. Everybody has a wall of awful, even my neurotypical folks in the audience. People with ADHD have more of them, and they tend to be bigger. This is how the wall of awful works. Every time I fail, I get a brick in my wall, a little failure brick. Along with the failure brick, I get a disappointment brick, because I disappointed myself, so I get a disappointment brick. And I get a disappointment brick for everyone whose opinion of me matters as it relates to this task. So if I didn't do my math homework, I'm getting a disappointment brick for my mom and my dad and my math teacher. And maybe a classmate or two if it's like a group assignment or something, right? When we disappoint someone, we are naturally concerned that they're going to reject us. And if we have ADHD, we're even more concerned. So I also get rejection bricks for those folks. You with me? I feel pretty bad about this mistake. I got some guilt, so now I got a guilt brick too. Guilt leads to shame and worry, right? We start to doubt ourselves. There's bricks, there's blocks. Guilt is a brick, shame is a block. Guilt is I feel like I made a mistake. Shame is I feel like I am the mistake. And if the reason I made the mistake is because I have ADHD, doesn't that mean I'm the mistake? No, not even a little bit. It just means the ADHD won. And that's okay, sometimes the ADHD wins. Now that it won, let's pick up the battle anew, and we'll win this time. So the bricks build up and build up and build up, right? And this is repetitive. And these walls can interact, right? So if I have a wall of awful for math, and then I have to pay my taxes when I get older, right? I built one up on math in high school and middle school and high school, and now I have to deal with my taxes. All of a sudden, that math wall is creeping over. Does that make sense? And if I also have a wall of awful around money and self-worth and that kind of stuff as it relates to my salary and those things, I have even more walls of awful getting crammed into this tax bill that I have to navigate. Does that make sense? How these things can play? Okay. So, every time we have to engage with the task that is connected to our wall of awful, we have to get past the wall of awful in order to do the task. When your kid looks like they're sitting there not doing their homework, and you're like, how come you haven't started yet? You've been sitting there for 15 minutes. What is going on? They're working. They're just working on their wall of awful. And if you don't know what the wall of awful is, it takes forever. But when you know what it is, it gets quicker, it gets faster, right? These videos are on How to ADHD. Do you guys know about How to ADHD on YouTube? The YouTube channel? Oh, we got to email everybody and make sure everyone knows about How to ADHD. So, the failure is going to make us draw inaccurate conclusions about ourselves and our abilities. It's going to damage our self-esteem. It's going to damage our motivation and our optimism. We're going to feel trapped. It's going to trigger associations that are conscious or unconscious that might cause us to sabotage our efforts in the future, right? Like I did when I was like, well, I can't be perfect, so I'm just not going to try. But we got to get past the wall of awful. There's 5 ways people do it. The first 2 don't work. I can stare at my wall. That doesn't do anything. I'm not getting past anything. I'm just staring at it. I'm not even engaging with it. I can also try to go around it. Except that it's a metaphor and it's infinitely wide. I know because I made it up. You're not going around this wall. What that looks like often is, can I watch like an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants and then I'll do my homework? Can I watch just like, I just want to watch a little YouTube and then I can do it, right? But when I start watching a YouTube video, there's no obvious choice point to stop watching that video. It's not like YouTube goes, hey, you're done. Go do your homework. No, YouTube's like, great, here's another video, and another video, and another video, right? And I'm just caught in the dopamine roll of these videos and not getting anywhere. I was trying to go around it, but it didn't work. The first way that works is not healthy, and that's smashing through the wall. This is when I get angry and I crash through the wall. I need an emotion that has more energy and more power than the guilt and the shame and the rejection and the disappointment and all that stuff, right? The anxiety. So I get mad, either at you or at me. So you've probably all heard your kids say, fine, I'll do the math, or my homework, or dishes, or whatever, right? After having had an argument with you. Because you argued, and they got a bunch of dopamine, and they got a bunch of energy, and they crashed through the wall of awful, and they're off to go. Right? Or, They flip their hood up, and they smash inwardly. What's wrong with me? Why do I suck? How come I'm so bad at this? I'm never going to be able to get a good grade in social studies, whatever. All right, so we can smash inwardly, we can smash outwardly. Both of those are making an effort to get past the wall. But it damages relationships, right? I'm damaging my relationship with my mom, my dad, my teacher, my sister, my brother, my whatever, or with myself. The two emotions that are mostly used for smashing are anxiety and anger. Sometimes that's the same thing, right? The two things that get us past the wall, the two things that actually work, are climbing it and putting a door in it. Climbing it is about sitting with those emotions and processing them and figuring it out and getting to the other side, right? Just sort of dealing with what this is. Here's the thing. If you are climbing the wall of awful, you might know it. But if your kid is climbing the wall of awful, it looks just like staring at it to the outside observer. You cannot tell. There might be little hints, like if they're just staring at it, they might just be sitting there. But if they're trying to climb it, they might be slowly getting their iPad out of their backpack, right? Or like sit there with some amount of stuff ready to go, they're just not started yet. The best way to find out, though, is to go, hey kid, I was at this workshop and I learned about this thing called the wall of awful. This is what it is, and this is how it works, and these are the ways you get past it. It's not a hard concept. And you tell them that stuff, and then the next time they're doing their homework and they're not quite engaged yet, you go, hey, are you climbing your wall of awful? And hopefully they go, yeah. You're like, dope, how can I help? Every now and then, the inattentive ADHD folks go, no, I just was sitting here. I forgot I had homework, even though it's right there. And that's okay, because they're inattentive, and that's how that works. I know, because I do that sometimes too. The other thing that we can do is put a door on our wall. Putting a door on our wall is about changing our emotional state. That's all it is. The wall of awful is made up of emotions. I can counter those emotions with different emotions. Things that work. Music. It's great for motivating us, right? Most of you are older. So like, you know when you're like, I gotta go to the gym, I gotta go to the gym, I gotta go to the gym, and you're not going to the gym, and then the Eye of the Tiger comes on. You guys get that reference, right? I'm not that old. The Eye of the Tiger comes on, and you're like, oh my God, I'm doing push-ups on the floor. I don't even have to go to the gym. I'm just gonna like lift the house, right? Because all of a sudden the motivation is there, because that's the whole job of music, is to play with our emotions and affect us in some way, right? Make us happy, sad, romantic, energetic, whatever. So music is a great thing to do. Working in a different place is good. There's a reason people write in coffee shops. There's a reason kids want to go in the hall to do work. Sometimes the kid that you can't trust them in your classroom to get the work done because they're a horrible nightmare. Sometimes that kid can work in the hall wonderfully because it gets them past the wall of awful and gives them some dopamine because they're in a different place. The same is true in group work because we often do a better job working with another person than working on our own. Connected to that is body doubling, which is a wonderful ADHD strategy. Have anybody heard of this? It's going to sound crazy, but it's real. Some of you have probably accidentally body doubled your kids and then it went off the rails and didn't work anymore. And I'm going to clean that up for you. Body doubling is when somebody, doesn't have to be a kid, who has ADHD is trying to do some work and they can't. And then someone else comes and is with them. And then they can work. It's weird, it doesn't make sense, but it's how it goes. And that person, as soon as that person talks to them or tries to help them, everything falls apart. So shut up. Just sit there at the kitchen table and knit or whatever while your kid does homework. It'll be fine. Don't take out your phone, because we all know what happens, right? If you don't remember what happens, I'll pick my phone up and you'll all wonder why yours is in your pocket and on your hand. Ready, 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 ready? Bam! Phone! So don't take out your phone. But like, work on your laptop, read a book, that stuff's fine. And you can check in and be like, hey, how's it going? Fine, okay, cool. Need any help? No? All right, good. Believe them. Don't bother them. I presented at UNH, and there was a girl there who, she's like in a sorority, and her job on the weekends was she would go to a lawyer's office and do her homework in his office while he did his billing, and he paid her like 20 bucks an hour. Yeah, because otherwise he didn't do his billing. Right? Body double. So, putting a door in it, unsurprisingly, looks a lot like going around it. Because I can put a door in my wall of waffle by watching a YouTube video, and sometimes I'm right and sometimes I'm wrong. You know, even to the inside person, it's like, oh, am I putting a door in this, or am I just distracting myself and trying to go around it? I don't know, let's find out. Right? And then I'm watching whatever nonsense. I'm usually pretty good at like, it's just this video, and half the time I don't even get all the way through it. But my kids struggle with that. So those are the 5 ways people try to get past the wall of awful. The 2 that don't work, the 1 that does, but isn't great, and the 2 that do work and are pretty good. Any questions about that? No? All right, we're gonna start. We'll start questions in a couple minutes. Ways to become a stronger climber. Reframe failure, try to find the lesson in it. Mindfulness is great. Any really good, solid emotional work is going to be useful here. Learn how to be uncomfortable. We got to learn how to be uncomfortable. One of the best things that has helped me figure out and understand my wall of awful, like I added to it, is the idea of going into a cold ocean or a cold lake. You know how when you like go into water and it's really cold, you're like, this is awful, I don't want to do it. But if you go in, like you adapt, and then you're like, oh, this is fine, right? That's the wall of awful, right? Climbing the wall of awful. Some of it is just, I sit down and do my emailing, and I'm like, this is awful and I hate it. But once I start doing it, I'm like, oh, okay. Now it's comfortable, right? I needed to give myself time to transition into that emotion, that emailing task. And I had to do it cognitively and emotionally, as well as physically. So I had to just do the hard thing. Take responsibility for stuff, being a leader of myself, all those sorts of things. And the more I know what my walls of awful are, the better off I am. The same is true with your kids. We can also put handholds in our walls. So we can develop time wisdom, which is just knowing how long stuff takes, because people with ADHD are bad at knowing how long things take to do. But if you time it a few times, then you're like, oh hey, you read about a page a minute in a book, or doing the dishes takes all of 15 minutes, or whatever the case may be. The more we know how long stuff takes, the easier it is to do those things. And then if we can set clearer and more attainable goals, we'll be better off, because I know what I'm trying to do. Nope, we're done. All right. So building those strategies is going to be helpful. Where am I? I got distracted by the battery. The more ADHD friendly stuff we have, the better. And plans are critical. The more we can plan, the better off we're going to be. You might have a wall of waffle for planning. That stinks. Do it anyway. But planning is climbing, right? Like I have to do X, Y, and Z. Let me think through what I have to do and make a plan for what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. That's climbing. And then when I have the plan, that's a door through my wall. So I can make a plan and not even use it until the next day, and it's still helpful. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Oh, look, I'm loud again. So, yeah. I was doing this with a client of mine just around planning meals, because she would go to the supermarket with no plan in mind, and then like call up a recipe on her phone and spin out of control in the middle of the soup aisle or whatever, because she was like, I don't know what I'm making. I was like, yeah, well, let's plan it in advance, right? Plan the whole week. And she's like, this is so much better. Good. So plans are critical. And then when it comes to putting a door on the wall, I talk about most of these. satisfy your biological needs, right? It's going to be easier to do stuff if you've slept or eaten or gone to the bathroom or whatever the case may be. Define done, know when you're going to be finished. Are you done after half an hour? After you've read 2 pages? 3 pages? What is done? Listen to music, take a break if you have to, but plan your breaks if you have ADHD. Right? I'm looking at you, kid, up in the corner. Yeah, looking at you. Have a plan for your breaks, because if you don't, you're going to end up doing all kinds of random stuff, and what should have been 10 minutes is going to be an hour. Exercising, fidgets, all these things are gonna be helpful when it comes to the wall. So with that, I'll take questions because I was told to allow half an hour. We got a half an hour to go, and I left a bunch of extra slides to play with if we needed. So anybody have anything? Anybody like this? Or should I just keep babbling? Yeah?
I love your comments about lying. So I'm wondering if the lie is relatively minor, like say related to homework, and you know they're lying, and you're so frustrated, like you're being disrespected. Is there ever a good time later to talk about the lying? Is this just like a judgment call? Can you somehow mitigate the need to lie?
Yep. I hear you. So the kid's lying, it's not like it's a little lie about homework is what it sounds like. And you're like, oh, I'm so feeling disrespected and angry and grr, right? And I know they're lying to me and grr, right? Do I come back later? Okay, there's a bunch in here. There's a lot of stuff. 1, if someone is dysregulated emotionally, like, right, we're off to the races. Don't solve the problem in that moment. It's not a good plan. Right? Come back and solve that problem later, like you're saying, right? Let's revisit it later on when everyone is calm. But, here's the thing, Mom. I don't care that you're dysregulated. Stop it. You're the adult, and this is everybody, right? If your kid lies to you and that dysregulates you, that's on you. Does that make sense? This is what happens when my kids lie to me. My kids are like, why? And I'm like, this is my skeptical face. Or I'm like, are you sure? Or I say, that seems unlikely. And it's like really gentle, me calling them out. And I can do it because I'm not dysregulated, right? It's hard not to be dysregulated when you don't have a strategy for how to call your kid out on that lie. So hopefully this helps you not get as dysregulated, right? But it, like gentle stuff. Are you sure? That seems unlikely. This is my skeptical face. What I don't say is, you're lying. I don't say that, right? Because that's a really strong commitment. Like, now you are lying and you are bad and blah, 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 right? I tend to err on the side of like, maybe I misunderstood you, or maybe you misspoke, or like something, so that the kid can course correct in the moment. Does that make sense? That's what I want. I want them to course correct. And I want them to know that they can't get one over on Dad. That he sees through all the nonsense. And you know what else I want them to know? I want them to know that if they mess up, I don't care. I'm not going to take it personally. I'm not going to get all upset about it. It's just a problem to solve. That's it. They're not going to get in trouble. Does that make sense? And the reason I have that stance is because of what my biggest fear is. My single biggest fear is that my kids will go to a party, especially at the age they are now. I've had this fear since they were 2, before they were born. My biggest fear is addiction runs in my family. And the last thing I want is my kids to go to a party and get exposed to something and get into big trouble and hide it from me. If I over-respond to all the little trouble, there's no way they're talking to me about big trouble. So I want them to feel like they can talk to me about whatever it is. And that starts with homework and getting the detention because you didn't have a worksheet or whatever. Like, it starts there, When I don't over-respond to that stuff and I under-respond, then if there's big stuff, they're gonna come to me with the big stuff. Does that make sense? Like that's, most of my philosophy boils down to Brendan is afraid that his kid's gonna be a heroin addict. Like that's the math. And my kids are not gonna become that because I like didn't do the stuff that would lead to that as they were growing up. Like we're fine. They'll probably do something dumb, but I don't think it's gonna be that big of a deal. Did that answer your question? Cool. And I'm not trying to be a huge jerk when I was like, that's on you, but that's on you. Right? Like part of the problem, one second, and then yes. Part of the problem is we as parents often interpret our kids' story as our story. And we try to make us the main character in their story. And we're not. They're the main character. We are at best supporting characters. And if we can keep it to our supporting character role, they can grow and develop and figure stuff out more effectively. And some of that means they're just gonna mess up and make mistakes. It's their story, so there's gonna be drama, because stories equal drama. And we just have to help them navigate the drama. Go ahead.
If you're course correcting all the time, like, does it get blurry where the right and wrong falls? 'Cause I feel like sometimes there's this gray area where it's like, this is distinguishably a bad choice, and there's a way you can course correct, but if you're always course correcting, does it say that I'm always going to be here to help you through this, and it doesn't put the onus on them to take responsibility for it?
Yeah, if your kid is consistently making bad choices, at some point we gotta debrief.
And
Right? Like once we're seeing a pattern, then I have to go, hey kid, like what's going on?
what's an effective way to handle it at that point that's not going to put them in this horrible like shame spiral, but will help them like reflect and maybe make the right choice in the future?
Yep. It's entirely possible, I'm not saying guaranteed, it's entirely possible, and I'm being callous, but I'm gonna backpedal immediately, so, like, kind of like I did over there. It's entirely possible that I do not care that they're shame spiraling, right? If they earned it, they earned it. And that sucks, but they earned it, right? That doesn't mean I have to add bricks to their wall. I don't have to increase the shame, but I have to call them out on it, right? And then, this is me backpedaling, when they shame spiral, my job becomes helping to guide them out of the shame spiral, right? I think, what's wrong with me? I can't believe it. I'm so sorry, but it's okay. You messed up. It doesn't mean that you're the worst person in the world. We're still good. I'm still glad you're my kid. I still love you. But we gotta figure this out. This has to stop. And now I'm setting reasonable expectations depending on what it is. If it's something we can just stop, dope, let's do that. How are we gonna do that? If it's something that we can stop, but we're probably gonna mess up along the way, then I wanna make that clear too, right? Like, look, this has to stop. And like, odds are, you're gonna mess up a little bit as we fix this and clean it up. And that's the way it works. And if you mess up, I need you to come and talk to me about it so that we can learn what we can learn from that, right? But that's what it is. It's sometimes you just gotta call your kid out and say, this is what's up. Or your spouse, or your friend, or your employee, or your boss, whatever it is. The more we can look at the stuff that's hard and confront it, the better stuff gets, right? Like the further we can travel. And you're gonna do it wrong. You're gonna. I did it wrong. I did my kid's OCD wrong for like months. Because it turns out all the ADHD strategies are like the opposite of what you should do for OCD. A lot of ADHD is like, well, don't do it the hard way then. Why are you doing it the hard way? Let's make it easy. But anxiety is like, oh, you can't handle hard? Well, if you can't handle that, then you can't handle this. And then you can't handle this. And it just makes your world smaller and smaller. So my initial, like, okay, well, if that's too hard, don't do it. We'll do it this way instead, kept making it worse until I learned and fixed and adjusted. So you're gonna do it wrong, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad parent. It just means you're learning. But yeah, you gotta have a meeting or whatever and talk to them about it. And maybe that conversation needs to happen in a different environment. Like maybe you go for a walk and have that conversation instead of having it at the dinner table where you battle about homework every day. Because if don't have it where you usually battle, because it's just gonna become a battle. And that conversation should not be you and me and the problem in the middle, and we're like rah rah rah, right? Like that's not the problem. That's not the plan. It's you and me here, and the problem's over there, and we're talking about the problem, and we're a team, and we're cooperating, and we're on the same page. And we might not agree on all the things, on how to do it, and how to approach it, and what's really going on, and all that stuff. We have to communicate about that stuff so we can then get to the problem and then talk about how to solve it. But we're on the same team. And that's something you probably have to say out loud over and over and over again with your kid. When Nate was struggling, and I'll give you this in case it's useful, one of the things I would say to him is, dude, here, I want you to run until you can't. And when you can't run, walk. And when you can't walk, crawl. And when you can't crawl, I'll carry you until you can crawl again, because there's dignity in struggle, and that's valuable. Right? Like, let's do that. I learned since that I stole that from Martin Luther King and like ruined it, because I'm sure he said it better. But so he said something similar that I apparently was exposed to in some world and learned it. But that kind of motivational stuff, like, look, man, we're on the same team. Let's figure it out. That's the approach I would take. Yeah.
So, if you have a child that's just through the wall all the time, that's our pattern, just get anger to get through and burn
Yep.
out those emotions and those feelings to get through those things. Is there a way that we can get out of that pattern and
How old?
take the door and the other method? What's the strategy there to get out of that anger and that
So lots of very angry kid.
very angry, very upset, very physically violent?
Physically violent. Okay.
At home, nowhere else.
Yeah. Do you guys know about post-restraint collapse? You heard this phrase before? All right. Post-restraint collapse is, I have been spending my whole day keeping myself in check and not having ADHD. Like, they have ADHD, right? But they're pretending, they're masking, right? Like, I spent all day doing my best to not have ADHD, except that I do, and that sucks. And then I get home, and I can't anymore. Or I don't have to anymore. I feel safe, right? So some of it is that, not all of it, but some of it is that. Some of it is this, like, post-restraint collapse. Sometimes that comes out as anger, sometimes that comes out as, like, just being totally spacey and out to lunch. It depends on the kid, right? But some of it's that. And some of it is emotional regulation and anger, right? And like feeling less than and feeling anxious and shameful or whatever those emotions are. Figuring that out is going to be helpful. Like clinicians are hopefully here somewhere, because that part matters. And depending on how old your kid is, you could say, I went to the workshop, I learned about this thing called the wall of awful. It sounds like that's what's going on, at least to some degree. One of the things they said was that a common strategy is to sort of Hulk smash your way through the wall of awful. But he also talked about how that isn't the best strategy and it doesn't really work that well. And that part of what's tricky about it is the other ones require more skill, right? Like smashing is a very unskilled, minimal skill response. It's fight, right? So fight, flight, freeze, the stress response. Fight is smash, flight is go around, freeze is stare at it. It's the body stress response. So your kid is in fight mode, right? And you gotta help de-escalate that anxiety. And I'm sure clinicians are doing that stuff with you. But talking about the wall and like, hey, maybe we can climb it. Let's think about ways to climb it. And that kind of stuff will be helpful. Also, when kids are physical, right? Especially boys, it's tricky. Because we've become a very not physical culture. And we don't always know what to do with it. But physical is a communication style. So some of that is he's communicating, right? And I've never seen your kid, I don't know what he's doing, so I don't know if I'm unlocking stuff or not, but I hope that I am. But it's a thing to think about around well, if the kid is communicating physically, how can we make it safe to communicate physically? For mom and dad and the kid, right? And give the kid the need, right? We all talk about people being touch starved and all that kind of stuff. Your kid, I don't know how old he is. He might be aging out of snuggling with mom and stuff and might still need that. So how do we get that, right? In a way that feels okay and appropriate for his age and all that stuff. We were at the dentist yesterday, and Gavin was sitting here, Nate was sitting here, and Nate and I were just Gavin was reading a book because we're waiting, right? And Nate and I Gavin said, should I move because are you guys just going to talk across me the whole time? And so Nate and I were like, no, and then I leaned in really close across the book, and Nate leaned in really close across the book, and then we started nudging him and shoulder squeezing him between us and all this stuff. I haven't seen that kid smile that big in months, because he needed the physical part of it, right? It wasn't just, he knows that we love him, but he needed the physical part. So that might be in here somewhere. I don't know. But it might be. You might find that you can de-escalate the anger if you can navigate things differently. And whatever you're asking to do is probably something that causes anxiety. And what do we do about that? Is it a skill set that's missing? Is it a deficit? He doesn't really know how to do this thing that he's being asked to do, so he's overwhelmed by it, and now he gets mad. Maybe we drop our expectations. I'm a big fan of lowering expectations until we find where they should be, and then building the skills up to where we want them to be, because there's often a gap. Probably you're above what he can do. That was a very long-winded answer, and I hope there was something useful hiding inside of it for more than one person in the audience. Anybody else got anything? Because I have 14 minutes. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
How do you get any strategy for bridging the gap between someone frustrated or procrastinating and needing to work on other strategies, let's say mindfulness, because that seems to be the opposite end of the spectrum. And if they're stressing out about writing a paper that they haven't done for a week and it's Thursday night and they need to do it, and you've got them practice mindfulness, that almost would seem like it's a joke.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah. So what do I do with how do we help a kid do some mindfulness stuff when they don't have that skill and they're anxious? Is that basically what the question is? All right. A few things. And you also mentioned doing a paper that is due tomorrow or whatever in there too. So he's anxious about the paper, right? People with ADHD learn how to burn anxiety for fuel. Anxiety is the only thing we can burn for fuel and wind up with more of it when we're done. But we burn a lot of anxiety for fuel. People do that in general. ADHD people do it more. So if your kid is hey, it's finally due tomorrow, which means it finally feels like it matters. So now I'm going to burn that anxiety that I have for fuel to do the paper. And you're watching them start to burn the anxiety, and you're like, oh no, they're getting anxious. Be mindful. It's actually the opposite of what they need. No, Dad, you don't understand. I'm going to use this to write the paper. But they don't really know they're doing that. They don't. You figure that out in your 20s and 30s. Some of you are finding it out right now. That's what's up, right? So your strategy is the opposite of what he needs, or she needs. And connected to this is another part of ADHD that I didn't get to, but I'll talk about it now. Do you guys know that people who have ADHD don't understand what the word important means? This hurts the neurotypical people's mind. Rochelle, you do stuff because it's important, right? Doesn't matter when it has to happen. You can do the important thing that's not going to matter for 3 weeks. Fair to say? Yeah. That's not how the ADHD brain works. The ADHD brain does not care if something is important. It only cares if it's urgent, which gets back to his question. Right? It's got to be urgent for me to care about it. So when my wife is like, hey, we should start doing the taxes because it's January, I'm like, yo, 4 months. What are you even talking about? And then like we start creeping up on March and she's like, taxes. Because she knows there's a lot of stuff to figure out because I work for myself and it's complicated and like I need time to do that. And I'm like, it's not even April. Like it's March. And she's like, yeah, but it's March 31st. And I'm like, but that's still not April. Right? What I've had to do is go, okay, I want my wife to be happy, so her happiness becomes the trigger for my urgency. So I'm listening to her tone, and when it hits the like, if I don't start moving on taxes now, my wife will be anxious, then I start using my anxiety to do the thing, because hers is going to be bad and mine's going to be productive. Does that make sense? So the ADHD brain is motivated by urgency, not importance, which is counter to how the world wants everything to work. But it's how we operate. I know people who thought important and urgent were the same thing. Like, people, if you didn't know those were two different words that had different meanings, you probably have ADHD. Because neurotypical people know the difference. And they're like, urgent means it has to be done now or tomorrow. Important just means it's of significance and should be done and is worth putting effort in, even if it's 3 weeks away or next year or whatever. And people with ADHD are like, wait, why would you ever put effort into something that's not important, doesn't matter for a year? It's why we struggle with things like long-term goals, right? Like, you know what's never urgent? Losing weight. It's always important, but it's not like it stays urgent every day all the time. So it becomes a hard thing to do because it requires that constant attendance and maintenance and practice and all that stuff. People with ADHD are often really bad at practicing. Unless we just love the thing that we're doing. Because if it's engaging and it's something we're passionate about and something we're interested in, then we can do it all the time. So your kid who's like an amazing baseball player and practices baseball every day, yeah, because it's baseball. They love baseball, but they probably stink at their vocab words because that's not important. That's not interesting and engaging. So they study for vocab the day before the test, not all week long. Am I making sense here? That's part of the trap that you're describing. It's like, my kid just does everything at the last minute. Yeah, because time doesn't make sense to them. And stuff doesn't matter until it's due tomorrow. I would not have a book if I didn't have a co-writer who is neurotypical. Go ahead, and then I'll go over to Rochelle.
So as parents, we can provide these tools or exercises and family can be supportive, but how do we prepare our children for when they get their first job and their employer doesn't realize that, washing dishes is going to freak them out, and, even though they work in a
Well, they shouldn't get a job washing dishes.
Right, so, but
For real.
this is where I've always struggled with the, maybe your child is on IEP and you have the tools necessary at the school. Now there's college things about and getting a job, so how do they let people know without them being judged or overlooked for having a disability per se? My daughter started working in a restaurant and she was crying her first day there because all this noise and
It was
activity
sensorily
was
overwhelming.
so overwhelming for her. And she got through it. I'm super proud of her. Yeah, but as I'm a manager myself, and I don't know that I could handle that if I had someone working for me like that. It's very hard to kind of navigate around that and provide the,
Yeah. So how do we prepare our kids for a real job and help them avoid feeling
right.
the guilt and shame of not being able to do it, or be ostracized or ridiculed, or...
So much here tonight, I feel terrible that I can maybe
before you leave, no one leave here feeling bad about yourself. That's why I want to say before you leave. Please don't. Oh my God, that is not a thing. You learn better, you do better. That's all. You didn't do it.
I feel bad too.
Don't.
I just feel like I've done so much wrong for her. I felt like she was lazy. I felt like she wasn't trying. And because I see her on her phone,
Yeah.
I see her watching movies and not doing her homework.
And maybe sometimes she's not trying.
So how do you differentiate between
Ask.
pulling over on me versus she's, dealing with some of the things you mentioned?
Ask. Shoot straight. Hey, Kate, you got homework. I see that you're watching a thing on your phone. Why? And she's got to be able to safely tell you, right? Like, I'm watching a thing on my phone because I'm feeling really anxious and overwhelmed, and this helps me decompress. Okay, cool. How much time do you think you need? How many, do you need to watch one video, 2 videos, 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What do you think? If she's like an hour and a half, and you're like, well, that'll take us to 7 o'clock, and you got home. Like, you might have to do some math there, right? But having open communications about this stuff is the way to go. And that open communication teaches your kid, right? Like, they're gonna learn how to do a job because they're gonna navigate that. And also, it is not our jobs as parents, and believe me, I've fallen into this trap too. It is not our jobs as parents to keep our kids from suffering negative consequences. It's not. It is our job as parents to help our kids be able to navigate the negative consequences that they will inevitably deal with. So if they get a job that's totally overwhelming and way too much noise, we go, okay, cool. We hold them while they cry, and we listen to them complain about how noisy it is and how much they hated it, and we go, all right, cool, well, maybe tomorrow will be different, or Saturday, or whatever day they go back, right? And if we find that they're coming home every day for a month, 2 months, crying and overwhelmed, then we're like, different job. Like, this is not the job for you, right? Maybe, because even that assumes that they can afford to not have a job. And if that's not true, then you have to deal with the suck. Do you know what I mean? Like, it depends. It depends. Finances matter here. But that's part of the deal. And teaching our kids how to navigate these things that's our role. And it's tricky, because they're navigating stuff that we didn't have to navigate, and we don't know how to navigate. Right? If social media, and if I had a phone in my pocket when I was in high school, oh my God, it would not have been good. It wouldn't have been. I got in trouble at work one day because I discovered a good book and was just reading a book, let alone a phone, right? So, yeah, it's I wish I had a better answer than that, but they're gonna have stuff that's hard, and that's okay. We gotta love them through it and support them through it, and they'll be okay. They'll have this job that they hate, and that maybe teaches them they don't want to work in a restaurant, and maybe go do temp something instead. Or they're like, I hated that job for 3 weeks, and then I clicked with my friends, with the people who worked there, and it became a lot easier to navigate because I felt like I had friends and support, and I could deal with the noise as a result. Or maybe you just get the noise canceling, drummer things that are not that obvious, and now it's not so loud.
More of the distraction, and just a lot of direction coming in all at once,
Yeah, a lot of learning, a lot of processing, and that's difficult for the ADHD brain. But if she learns all that stuff, if they can be patient with her, and maybe have her do a little bit of it, I do a third of the job, and then a third of the job, and then a third of the job, if that's possible. I don't know if it is. And my responsibilities slowly increase, and now I'm a rock star, and I can do all, because ADHD people and restaurant work is like a match made in heaven. Because it's nothing but emergencies. It's nothing but urgency. Urgency, urgency, urgency. Nothing has to be important because it's all urgent, and we're like, yes, dopamine! But we have to figure out how to do it first in order for that to work. That's why people with ADHD make good teachers and good policemen and firemen and soldiers and entrepreneurs. It's because it's so much urgency. So she might end up taking to it, but she's not going to take it to it like a duck to water. She's going to take it to it like a duck walking through mud on her way to water, and then eventually it's good. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I'm in her corner.
So I'm gonna preface this, it's a loaded question,
Yep.
but we do have educators in the audience, so I'm gonna ask, what would be your best piece of advice to these teachers that have a bunch of alphabet soup in their class, and the classes, as we all know in math, are getting overloaded?
Mm-hmm.
How should they manage these behaviors when you have Charlie Brown trying to get his dopamine fix, and now he's triggering Linus? Maybe, Sally over here can't handle the noise and can't concentrate. I feel for these teachers.
I do too.
Everything they got going on, but what would be like your advice to them handling all of this?
A lot of it is stuff they already know, right? So systems, clear communication, clear expectations. That's a big piece. When you've got a kid that is a heavy hitter, try treating them. This is gonna sound like I'm not giving teachers as much credit as I genuinely do. So please recognize that I'm exaggerating and clarify in this particular situation. Treating that kid like, my words are failing me. I'm gonna say it poorly and then I'll clean it up. Treating that kid like a peer almost, right? Like with dignity and respect, and not like a kid, not like like I'm the adult and you're the child. Like, don't do that. That's not gonna work. I don't care how old they are. They could be 6. Treating them like with dignity and respect, and like they're a peer, right? And like, hey, da-da-da, this is what's up, right? This is the challenge. And cooperatively, right? Like, we're on the same team. What are we gonna do, right? I would pull kids out in the hallway and be like, all right, we're banging heads. I don't wanna bang heads. This is what I need. Your homework tonight is to figure out what you need so that you can give me what I need. Right? Like, what do you need from me so that I can get you quieter in class, or you not doing whatever the thing, or doing whatever the thing is, whatever, I don't know, it depends on the kid, right? But I would literally take kids and be like, you don't have homework tonight. Like that thing you're supposed to be doing, you don't have to do it. Instead, you have to do this, right? Because that way, that's me being fair, right? Because if I'm like, you have to write a rough draft of your essay, and you have to do this, they're not doing it. But if I'm like, your rough draft is due the day after tomorrow, or whatever, like, we'll figure it out. This is what I need. Then I get more mileage, right? But it's cooperation. It's like, hey, we all want the class to go smoothly, right? What gets tricky is when there's like 4, 5, 6 of those kids. And maybe you can do one-on-one conversations and then you'll get somewhere. But if one teacher tries to sit down with 2 kids or 3 kids, the kids, especially if they're in middle school or high school, start to recognize the power dynamic of there's 2 of them and one of the teacher, and it doesn't always work. It depends on the teacher. Some teachers can do that, some teachers can't. But yeah, some of it is just that, like, hey, we're all on the same team, help me out, right? Some of it is administrative support and those sorts of things needing to come in. Some of it's professional development, some of it's consulting with people like me who go and observe the class and see the teachers and see the kid and go, what's up with this? Some of it is IAP 504 stuff. When I was a special education teacher, this blew my mind. I was in a high school, and I was new to this high school. I came in the middle of the year, and I had a bunch of freshmen and sophomores on my caseload. And I met with all of them within the first 2 weeks of getting hired, or starting. And I went through their IEPs with them. And none of them had seen their IEPs before. And I was like, how? What do you mean you've never seen your IEP before? that's a piece of it, right? If kids don't know that they have this document that talks about them and how they work, if they're not familiar with it, how can they be invested? You know? Like, that's a piece of it too. There's a whole lot there's all kinds of things in there. While I'm on IEPs and 504s, you should all read your kids' IEPs and 504s and get to know them, because it's not just about school. When you boil it down, all teaching is communication. That's it. So if your kid's 504 IEP says break large tasks down into small manageable chunks, or large assignments down into small manageable chunks, cleaning a room, like cleaning your bedroom, is a large assignment. So if your kid struggles to clean their room, maybe break it down into small manageable chunks. If it says preview new material, and you're taking your kid to a funeral, or to see a grandparent they haven't seen since they were 2, that's new material. Preview what that is. Here's how that funeral is going to go. This is what it's going to be like visiting grandma, right? Like, think of it that way. Think about how this stuff could apply to home and the challenges you're facing, and you're going to find a whole bunch of hints and entire strategies hiding inside of that 504 IEP, which is not the teacher question, but I felt like I exhausted the teacher thing, because it's like gigantic. And also I kind of need specifics, and you can't really give them, right? Like, if it's like, this is the dynamic, then I can start doing stuff, but not having that much information is a limit to what I can do. It's 9:05. I don't care, but because I'm like rolling on dopamine right now. I'll crash halfway home, not literally. But I also don't want to keep you guys up and out forever. But if you have questions, I'll be packing up and hanging out. Feel free to come and bug me. I want to be super transparent that I am not taking any new clients or anything until at least next year. The rough draft, or not the rough draft, the edits of my book is due December 15th. I have a black belt test December 13th. I have 2 magazine articles to write for Attitude Magazine. I have 6 interviews, a workshop, a panel, and a support group to run at the ADHD conference in the middle of November. Thanksgiving happens too, I guess. And I have a podcast to relaunch. And I have a workshop a week from today in Needham that I have to write. And there's something else that I'm forgetting. So I don't have any space for new clients. So now is the time to ask me. Or send me a future email for January and say I saw you at, so I know who you are. Because I get a lot of emails and I'm not perfect to respond to all of them. But if I'm like, oh, you saw me, then I will make sure I get back to you. But yeah, just to be transparent, I wish I had space, but I just don't at the moment. But also, like, thank you guys, you've been great. Your questions were amazing. And really, just thank you for how much you love your kids and how invested you are in your kids. Because that's what this is telling me. And the last thing I want to say before I forget is look around, because all of you live-ish in the same community. It's 2 different communities, and I don't know how close Grand Dunstable is to here, but there are people in your community who are here right now that are facing the same things that you are facing, and you may as well connect to them and like have a friendly face that gets it. So take advantage of this particular moment while there are people here that are in the same neighborhood as you. And with that, thank you very much.
Okay, really quickly before you depart, some of you bought tickets. We want to draw the winner. And again, my huge thanks to Brendan. We had a challenge trying to schedule him in here because the high school is a popular space, but we're really grateful we were able to make this work.